Thank you for tuning into the Talking Tech monthly video series. Today, our guest is Matt Douglas, Senior Director of Sales Engineering with CBTS. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. I appreciate it, John.
Yeah, well, I know one of the questions that our customers, regularly ask is, what's going on with SASE? Who's the right vendor for me to use for SASE? And I know CBTS does a lot in that space, so we appreciate you tuning in and giving us some background there.
No, I'm excited to kind of go through this and see, to kind of see what we can impart on the folks here. I appreciate it.
Sounds good. Well, tell us a little bit about you and your background, and what elevated you, or what your journey was to becoming the Senior Director of Engineering at CBTS.
At CBTS, yeah. Actually, I've been here about 17 years now, John. I don't know if you knew it was that long, but I had been involved with technology through the years, and I started an ISP, an internet service provider in Indianapolis in 2000. And it grew to a decent size. In about 2008, CBTS was looking to acquire some additional companies around the Midwest, and I joined CBTS then. And it's just been a great ride. I've had a number of kind of experiences of being, kind of an individual sales engineer. I was a product manager on our UCaaS side for a while, and now I manage a group of sales engineers that support, partners like you guys in the field. So CBTS has just been a great ride for me. We're about a 25-year-old company, a couple thousand employees. We do around $1 billion a year or so in revenue. So a number of different managed services, of which, SD-WAN and SASE are one of those things. So.
Yeah, I know we've worked with each other on several different customer applications over the years, and always appreciate your insight and what you guys are doing over there. So when you talk about the $1 billion in revenue that CBTS has, tell us a little bit about your client profile. Who's an ideal client for CBTS?
Sure, absolutely. We kind of have our roots really. First, we started out in the Midwest 25 years ago, kind of working with mid-sized companies, kind of companies in the 500 to kind of 10,000 employee range. And really over the last 25 years have grown a book of business or a set of capabilities that we're about half a VAR or reseller, about half of our business is selling kind of, the best of breed OEM solutions, the names you'd expect, HP, Cisco, Palo, these kinds of things. And the other half of our business has evolved over the last 20 years or so is in managed services, taking network services, UCaaS, security services, and turning those into as a service offerings. Because, like you, I'm sure, seen in the channel, more and more customers out there are, instead of wanting to buy kind of point solutions and a box with a whole bunch of features and go deploy it themselves, they want some assistance in designing it, speccing it out, installing it, and even day two support. So we've kind of grown to be, if you would, like, big enough to matter, but right-sized enough to be flexible to deliver custom applications, custom managed services into companies, kind of more mid-sized to lower enterprise.
That fits perfectly with the TruPoint story as well. I mean, that's where we spend a lot of our time, is in those mid-sized organizations as well. We find that, typically you've got a smaller IT team, they've got a lot of demands on their time, and they can use help and guidance in finding those right IT solutions. So I think what's interesting to me about CBTS and the way that you guys have grown is kind of that combination of OEM and managed support, right? And I think it gives you a unique perspective because you have some of the born in the cloud solutions that you guys are working with. You've got some point solutions you guys have been working with and have a good depth of experience in both of them. And I think that kind of, when we talk about SASE, right, and what's happening within that space, I think it gives you guys a little bit
crazy, right? The growth in that space has been crazy.
It is, and it's it's kind of one of those things where when you ask me what is cloud, right? And there's 100 different definitions of it. Well, I think now what is SASE is kind of getting that way, right? There's a lot of different flavors out there, and that's what we're seeing with customers. So what does SASE mean to you when someone says that? What is your definition, and how do you define that?
Yeah, because there's been a lot of definitions, right, as this term's come
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's come from the evolution, if you would, of SD-WAN was first out there in the industry. And then as we started to connect businesses together, what was happening with their security fabric, right? And so for us, SD-WAN really is about taking an SASE is really about taking an intelligent SD-WAN edge and combining it with an intelligent cloud security fabric. Oftentimes people call that SSE. So really for us, SASE is SD-WAN plus SSE equals SASE. And really this journey we've seen customers on is that they want a ubiquitous security fabric, the same security experience, whether I'm working from my laptop in the office in Indianapolis or the office in New York City or from my home or from a Starbucks. It needs to be that same experience. And certainly it's been driven as well by where applications are, because again, when we first met customers 10 years ago, those applications were all sitting at data centers or headquarters. And now those applications are in SaaS applications. They're and maybe people are moving things to AWS or Azure, to other third-party resources. And so this idea of the fact that our applications can be in any cloud, we're kind of in a multi-cloud environment. Well, then my security fabric's got to be able to support that. That's something that SASE can help our customers with in the journey.
Sure. And I mean, with COVID and all of the impacts and the remote workforce, and now that people are moving more back into the office, that's only hyper accelerated all of that, right? So the ability to connect in a good way from those, remote offices, like you said, whether it be a Starbucks or whether it be somebody's living room, that's and being able to secure that connection is what we're seeing with clients as well. What
problem too, I might add, the other thing too is that the journey now is ZTNA. We've heard the term ZTNA for a long time again from the vendors out there. But those technologies are now maturing, and we're seeing more and more folks who are realizing that the standard VPN technologies of kind of VPN back into the data center headquarters and having a pretty wide look at all the resources back at a data center headquarters, you need to limit that to kind of a ZTNA fabric. When I'm, again, working from my laptop, maybe Matt only needs to see certain applications back at the data center or even certain SaaS applications. So we're seeing a big movement too of customers starting to look at ZTNA in ways that they just didn't do in the past.
Yeah, the technology landscape is not getting any less complex for the IT directors and the CIOs. Yep. That's for sure. So talking about that, what are some of the key challenges that you see SASE or ZTNA solving for businesses?
Yeah. Well, I go back to kind of the ubiquitous, consistent security fabric, no matter where I'm working from, so that, the alerts, the analyzation, the threat hunting is the same, whether I'm working from the office, whether I'm working from home, whether I'm working from Starbucks. That's a big deal. Certainly, growing compliance regulations and growing cybersecurity insurance regulations are driving a lot of this change. I'm sure you've seen this with your customers, right? It's getting to the point where cyber insurance people are now requiring certified backup and DR plans, certified MDR plans, things that, again, you just didn't see 2 and 3 years ago. So I think this is being driven by, a lot of times by compliancy, by cybersecurity, but then even from competitive things. I mean, we're starting to see our customers more talk about that security is part of their brand, not something that just IT does, but security is part of marketing, that when they're talking to their customers or their third-party vendors or the people in their ecosystem, their security fabric is becoming part of their brand and part of their value as a company. So we're starting to see people invest more in security, certainly, than they did a couple of years ago.
That's for sure. The other thing, I mean, is, cloud adoption, right? We're seeing with our clients that have made that cloud transition, or, if they're a little bit slower to make that transition, that, laying a good SASE fabric or SASE network can provide a baseline for them to be able to access those applications in a good way, in a reliable way, and a consistent security experience as well. Are you guys seeing that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was one of the beauties, right, of the right SD-WAN technologies at the edge too, is that these SD-WAN technologies, connected to multiple circuits, let's say a couple of fiber DIAs or maybe even a fiber and cable, can keep applications up and running. So one of the great things is, when I'm working behind an SD-WAN SASE edge, and I've got an important phone call, I'm working on an important document, I lose a circuit, I won't know any different. So that's some of the great things about some of those technologies, or, that was one of the big promises of SD-WAN to begin with. So this combination of, an SD-WAN fabric being able to reliably get me to resources to keep applications up, even if I'm losing a circuit, combined with then the cloud security, ubiquitous cloud security, and then even ZTNA, capabilities, improve kind of VPN 2.0 capabilities back into applications in a data center or to the cloud. That's certainly where it's going, because I mean, when you talk to customers today and you start to ask them, okay, tell me your 10 most important applications and where do they sit? They are all over the place. And the traditional edge firewall can't handle that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you're talking about the different SASE solutions, right, there's definitely some differences between them. And I know you guys work with multiple different providers. So tell me a little bit about that. And then, hopefully here at the end, we're going to, spend some time on a whiteboard session to go through it as well. But what are the SASE solutions that you guys work with today within the CBTS portfolio?
CBTS portfolio, sure. So from a kind of SD-WAN perspective, an edge perspective, we are a Meraki shop, a Palo shop, and a VMware shop, VeloCloud. Okay. Now, one of the interesting things that's happened kind of in the industry in the last couple of years is it's always shifting, right? You got new players coming in, players maturing, et cetera. Palo is one of those stories of some maturity that's changed a lot in the Palo world. So Palo actually, as they came in, were doing some new work on their portfolio over the course of the last couple of years, bought a company called CloudGenix. I think you're probably familiar with them. Absolutely. CloudGenix was always very strong in keeping track of applications and reporting on applications, kind of layer 7 intelligence. And so for us, really, our portfolio is typically about Meraki and oftentimes, sometimes Umbrella, maybe connected in Meraki world, or then Palo or Velo at the edge and using Palo Prisma up in the cloud for security. Now, you and I talked before this conversation, you do a lot of work, I think, sometimes with Cato as well. And so really, as this industry's matured, Cato and Palo are kind of two of the leading single vendor SASE solutions out there, solutions that have got backbone networks, multiple POPs, both edge devices and cloud security. So for us, it's Meraki sometimes with some of our retail customers who that's good enough. And then for those customers needing mature cloud security services, it's Palo Prisma with either Palo or Velo at the edge.
One of the questions that we always get is, around latency, and we can dig into this in a whiteboard session if it makes more sense, but is around latency. If you go to, let's use that Palo Prisma or the Cato solution or one of the solutions where you're going through one of their POPs for the majority of your connections, assuming that you're going out to the outside world or even site to site. So how does that impact, the latency that you see in an application's performance?
Like you take Meraki as an example. Meraki has, let's say I get a couple of internet connections to Meraki. Meraki can kind of keep track of applications site to site, meaning Meraki to Meraki, anything is bookended by Meraki. But that traffic's just going across, quote, the raw internet, right? You start to look at solutions that people have built kind of global backhaul networks, and Cato is one of those. Palo is one of those too. I don't know if you're aware of that. Mm-hmm. That have taken their POPs and built, if you would, a private network behind it. It's actually still on the internet, but they use kind of private prioritized connections from the biggest tier 1 connectors, internet service providers out there. And so one of the advantages of some of these next generation SD-WAN platforms is when you're trying to send applications maybe coast to coast or between continents, is that this backhaul network becomes part of your SD-WAN routing fabric. So every location that's in this SD-WAN cloud, whether it's in the US, Canada, Latin America, EU, whatever, becomes part of a ubiquitous routing cloud. And those long haul destinations are in a prioritized, fashion in this kind of private network behind it. And so, yeah, those are some of the things that when we're talking to customers, we want to understand where are their applications, where is that, where are the key applications, where are they coming from, what are the routes we need to put, across, where are they going, either, across the coast, across the globe, et cetera, and try and match the right technology to that. But you're right, the more intelligent networks like Cato, like Palo, have built a global backhaul network to connect their POPs together.
Perfect. For our viewers out there, if you found value in the information today, and the being able to sit in with an expert in the field who's been doing this for a nice long time, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next month.